and welcome to another episode of the Marion County Children's Services Agency podcast. My name is Elizabeth Moore. I'm the Foster Care and Community Engagement Coordinator. And here with me today, I have, you don't go by Dr. Iarussi in public, right?
Ron's fine.
Okay, so this is Ron Iarussi. He's really Dr. Iarussi, Superintendent of the Marion City Schools. So why don't you go ahead and introduce your role? You know, I normally allow you to do that part, but I just kind of took over, so.
No, that's fine. My name is Ron Iarussi. I've been the superintendent at Marion City Schools for a little over 3 years now.
Okay.
It's hard to believe.
That's shocking.
Years. I came to Marion from the Youngstown area. This will be going into my 18th year as a superintendent.
Oh, okay.
So got some good experience in relation to that. I had a familiarity with Marion, the previous superintendent, and I worked together on a few occasions, and we actually partnered on some grants together.
Oh.
So when he left,
I never knew any of that.
I had some relationships here in Marion already.
Okay.
I knew, I knew a little bit about the district, but I really liked the path that the school district was headed down. Really creating career opportunities for students.
Mm-hmm.
And the pathways that were here and the 4 pillars that have been established in a strategic plan really piqued my interest in Marion City, and I felt like my background a little bit would I'd be able to serve Marion City Schools as a superintendent. So yeah, I've been here for 3 years. Obviously, this past year was different.
Yeah.
Everybody says it felt like a first-year superintendent because we really never had a playbook or anything like that prepared us for, how to run a school district during a pandemic.
So why don't we just go ahead and get into that now? Because one of the things I had asked for you to talk about was how your school district really, in a lot of ways, and I guess, my experience is also Marion City Schools because that's where all of my family is involved. And so I'm not sure what other school districts were doing, but to me, it just seemed really like you guys were very serving of the community and of the students. So I'd love to have you share some of that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, when the pandemic, I remember it was a Thursday, and it was the governor's press conference when he announced that schools would be on an extended spring break.
Yep.
And I remember it was confusing to us because not everybody has a spring break at the same time. So we weren't sure if he was referring to higher ed, because they have spring breaks. But once we clarified that, we knew that, we basically had the Friday, and then we actually we had to shut down the buildings on Tuesday. But we decided to shut down the building on Monday for students and bring the staff in. So basically, in 2 days, we prepared for what we thought was going to be 3 weeks.
Right.
But we knew, that it would probably be longer. But so we talked about, okay, what systems do we have in place, and what do we have to focus on? Well, we knew we had to get, our teachers needed to get together and get enough materials to our kids. We tried to distribute as many Chromebooks as we could. But one of the major issues that we focused on was making sure our kids were fed. And I think we ended up becoming almost a model for the state for how we continued to distribute food to our families. The first week I was on a bus. I might have been on someone bus, by the way, when we were delivering food, and we decided to deliver food to the bus stops. And that was difficult, and we actually ended up delivering food from the buildings at that point. But
yeah, because there's a lot of logistics that would go into that, getting kids to know that's where they go.
Getting them to know where to pick the school, pick up spots where not every kid rides the bus.
Right.
All of those kinds of situations we had to figure out. But we were doing about 38,000 meals a week.
Wow.
So.
Wow. And do you know about how many students you guys have in Marion City Schools?
4,500.
Wow. That's amazing.
So we did that, and obviously we never finished out the year. So the complete last 9 weeks of the year was spent remotely. And then the interesting thing about that was, and I think people forget, at the end of the year, I'm talking about last school year, not this past school year, but the previous school year when the pandemic actually hit, the cases around the community were starting to decrease. There was this whole flatten the curve idea, and we felt like, okay, we're going to be okay. there was no question that in the fall we would be able to come back and return to normal. And then, things went south pretty quickly in the summer. So we were prepared for bringing kids back full on. We knew we were going to have some protocols in place and those kinds of things. But it was July 19th when the public health department said you're not going to be able to bring the kids back full time.
I remember because I remember like the excitement that my kids were going to be going back to school, and then, but I mean, obviously, very understanding from a parent's perspective of you can't just focus on this one particular thing, and so, and then you guys had to be very flexible even this last school year. Lots of changes.
We really did, because we started, we planned for full on. July 20th, we started planning for this idea of a hybrid model. And the main reason we had to go hybrid was because the health department realized that we couldn't social distance in a classroom. There's no way to keep 6 feet apart in a classroom full of 20 kids, but you could do it if you had 10 kids in the classroom. So that was the gist of the hybrid model. We had Wednesdays as our cleaning day, and again, we were still having to deliver food to our students while they were there physically, but we also had to deliver food to them while they were remote.
And you had some who were only remote too.
Yeah, we had about, I think we had over 2,000 students that chose the complete remote option. Now, by the end of the year, that had dwindled down to about 1,000, but... And then, we got to October, and we were headed in the right direction again. So we brought the elementary kids back.
2 weeks.
That lasted 2 weeks. And then
those were great 2 weeks.
Then we had to go remote for 3 weeks, in addition to our winter break.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And thankfully these kids got an opportunity to come back to school full time at the end of the year. I think that was really important for us to kind of try to hit the ground running next year. So we weren't going from, again, that totally different modality to back to normalcy. So
it's amazing, like as we're sitting and talking about it, like to know that it wasn't that long ago, but it also in some ways feels like a lifetime ago. Like, that was forever ago. There's a lot of life that has happened then. So we've already talked about a lot of stuff, in those talking points that I sent you. So how would you say that you guys partner with our agency? Other than the fact, I'll tell you from an agency's perspective, and maybe, Elizabeth's perspective, at least for me, that was one of the fears I had too, was the food shortage. What about these kids who rely on the school to get their food? And in addition to all of the take-home bags that they had, you guys did the pandemic EBT cards for all those school-age kids. So there was, and I didn't know how much the school had to do for that to happen.
Yeah, one of the key components that I think we're fortunate in Marion City Schools is we do have some really good relationships with our community partners. And our school district, we have social workers in every one of our buildings, and I think that's pretty important. And it was vitally important during the pandemic, because there were, and I remember at one time we had identified over 400 students that had completely fallen off the map, that we had no contact with. We didn't, they weren't online. We didn't know where they were, and so we were able to do home visits. Our SROs, the police department was outstanding during that time. I mean, they would go with us on home visits. And then obviously if there was a situation where we felt like kids needed some extra support, that's when our partnership would usually take place. But beyond that, I mean, we've, the things that we've done with, agencies like Children's Services in helping provide support and professional development for our teachers to recognize abuse, to be able to, talk to students about their situations and identify some areas that they might need additional support in. Those are the kinds of things. I mean, we're not necessarily experts in those areas, but we're fortunate to have people in the community that are.
Well, and the thing that I always tell people when I go to do training is the great news is it's not your responsibility. It's on us. And so if you ever have those concerns, and that's really for anyone who's listening or watching right now, really, if you ever have concerns for a child, it's not your responsibility to make that determination. You call in those concerns, and then we take it from there. So, and then I would say also on top of that, any of that information that you guys do in the community, we really try to get that out to the families that we serve, because and I hope that, people by now know that we're not just we're going to come out and tell you you're doing everything wrong, but we really are trying to connect people with resources. You guys have put on extra preschool registrations this year.
Yeah, preschool registrations. I mean, we're actually getting out into the community now to try to do preschool registrations. I think the last one was over on the West End at Logos Church.
Yeah.
And so we're plugging in our faith-based partners to some of those opportunities as well. Really just trying to get the district as much as we can out into the community. We want more kids in preschool. We want to make sure when they are kindergarten ready that they're there, that they get registered. What we're doing this year for our summer school program is fairly impressive, I think, too. There's a lot of hard work that went into that. We have 700 students that are participating in summer school this year.
I have 3 of them that are coming.
And, for the most part, in my travels and being out there, I think the kids are really engaged. I think they like being there. They're having fun.
You're doing the afternoon stuff too.
We do summer school, whether it's interventions or enrichment in the morning, and then we have some after school programs too. So another one of our partners is the YMCA, and they've come in and helped us, provide some after school, which is afternoon and summer school programming for our kids too.
Yeah, you're giving them breakfast, lunch.
Breakfast and lunch, and then we typically send home some sort of dinner. We pretty much supply them with 3 meals a day.
And then they're doing something that I don't think I've ever heard of, and so I don't know if my kids have just never been of age, but the enrichment things.
And that was a good idea this year. Our teaching and learning department got together and said, we definitely know that there are kids that have struggled, and they're going to need additional support and interventions to bring them up to speed. And I'll talk about what we're doing specifically in regard to that next year. But we certainly didn't want to just only focus on those students that also did prosper, and we did have quite a few that were able to keep up to speed. But to provide those enrichment opportunities for them in the way of camps is another way just to get kids more excited about school. Some of the enrichment camps are pretty cool that they're offering.
Yeah, so all 3 of my kids are signed up for walking and talking in Spanish.
Oh, great.
And the question everyone has asked me, well, the 3 kids and my husband, is how do you walk in Spanish?
That one, I did not attend that enrichment camp, so I don't have firsthand knowledge of how you walk in Spanish.
I know when I say it's called walking and talking in Spanish.
I think it's really about, if somebody asked me, because I have an Italian background, if somebody said, how do you walk in Italian, I'd probably talk about the culture a little bit. So,
well, that's what I'm like. I'm sure that's just it rhymes situation. Right. You're probably not going to just sit in a classroom. Is how I explained it. So what you said you were going to talk about some of the things you guys are doing next year.
Well, one of the things, the federal government has recognized that school districts are probably struggling with, getting our students re-engaged. And so in reopening in a safe environment and being prepared for a situation like a pandemic is difficult. We don't think about those kinds of things a lot. So our air quality and things like that will keep kids free from those opportunities, to be infected by an airborne virus are pretty critical things. But they also know that many of our students were probably affected by the pandemic and didn't learn as much as they were supposed to. So a lot of those dollars that we're getting are geared towards, making sure that we have an in-depth analysis of where our kids are at when they come back in the fall, so that we can identify where kids have missed and what gaps that we need to fill. But we're able to get a lot more resources now for our students, whether it's an individualized reading program or some math supports, or even from the social emotional part. What was the effect of the pandemic? So we just purchased a new software system that can track some of the data that we can collect on kids, whether it's from state assessments. We have a social emotional inventory that we take on kids, so we can compile all that data and make sure that we have almost an individualized plan for all of those students. And we're fortunate, and that's the way we're using a lot of that federal money to be able to do those kinds of things. Very cool. Yeah, but our staff, our teaching staff, I'll give them a lot of credit. I mean, they've gone through, could you imagine, trying to teach,
Nope.
You got kids online, you got kids home, you're preparing for
kids who had
kids
to
in
quarantine
class.
and oh my
And
gosh.
then, yeah, we had to shut down a building for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
because
Oh,
of
I
that.
forgot
And
about that
Hayes,
too.
Yeah, that was, so yeah, I mean, and they've done an outstanding job, but they also recognize that we need to really dive into where kids are at, determine, what those gaps are, but they've been very willing to be, active participants in developing those plans to get them back up to speed.
Wow, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, I really don't have anything else to cover. Do you have anything else that you'd like to make sure Marion knows?
Yeah, no, thanks for the opportunity to come in. We've really been trying to make a much more of an effort to make sure we communicate and connect with the community. Most of the students probably hear my voice on all those one calls that we got, and that's just one means of communication. I would encourage folks to make sure they, take a look at our newsletters, follow us on social media.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of good information about all of the good things that are happening in Marion City Schools and why it's an awesome place for kids to come and learn. And so I would encourage anybody out in the community to make a connection with the schools. Whether you have students in the schools or not, it's, the school is a pillar of the community, and our schools need to be effective in educating our students in order for the community to continue to thrive. So I would encourage anybody out there to make that connection with Marion City Schools.
Great. So I asked you if you watched my podcast and you said no, and that's fine. That's totally fine. But
I am going to watch the podcast.
One component, though, is that I do have a question that I usually ask people that I didn't prepare you for.
Oh, this is a ringer. Okay.
So what I'll do is I'll ask you the
Okay.
question, and then I'll kind of chat for a second, and then I'll come back to you. So it gives you a minute
All right.
to think about it.
Okay.
And so hopefully, usually when I ask these questions, they're not meant to be difficult.
Okay.
But what is it that made you or keeps you in education, especially after this last year and all those things that you
That's
talked
easy.
about? And
Yeah, that's an easy
Great.
answer.
Okay. Well, can I'm
Go
going to
ahead,
wrap
keep
it up
going.
just because
All
I'm
right.
used to my
Okay.
routine. So,
All
as Ron said, if you are not following Marion City Schools or anything like that on their social media, you guys are on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
You're on Facebook. Are you on
Twitter,
Instagram?
Yes,
Okay.
we have some Instagram. And then again, just our website is a good place to go for a lot more information.
So great resources, and if you live in the community, even if your students don't go to Marion City Schools, there are resources like the food stuff like that.
It's all
Yeah.
located there. Right?
That's what I thought. So there's a lot of great information that if you are part of Marion City Schools community, whether you're attending Marion City Schools or not, definitely some great stuff to check out. And if you're not attending Marion City Schools and you live in the community, that's probably something you might want to look into. Lots of great just things that they're doing for the Marion community. So, Ron, you said it was easy.
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, if it weren't for some dedicated teachers and coaches in my life, I can relate to a lot of our students because of their backgrounds and where they come from. I've had a similar type situation, and it was teachers and coaches that really, helped me grow and, get to the point that where I'm at. And so for me, it's all about the students, and really being able to see students grow and, achieve beyond what they thought they could achieve, because of the support of teachers and coaches and staff that really reach out and build relationships with kids. My wife's a teacher, so we're both, I'm a social studies teacher and football coach and track coach at heart, but actually being able to influence and have an effect on a kid's life. If there's one kid out there that has a similar situation to what I did and is successful because of something that I was involved in, then that makes it all worthwhile, and that's what keeps me coming back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Ron, for being on. Thanks for watching. If you have any ideas for any future episodes of the podcast or anything you'd like to see, please reach out to me. I'll have my information down below. And as always, have a great week. Thanks.